the hate speech and crimes that are taking place across the board, one of the biggest worries for our Muslim American citizens and residents of the county is the bullying that can happen for our children in our public schools and other places. Now, while we know that the county executive does not directly control the school system, what can you do to influence the school board in a way to ensure proper mandatory training is provided within our county public schools in order to protect our children and all children of minorities?
So I used to be a school teacher. I taught school until 2006. And I always thought the best bullying prevention was being absolutely non-accepting of bullying behavior. The easiest way to stop something is to say there's no room for this classroom, and the students who are bullying are going to have to stop, and the kids who are bullied have to feel free to come forward and say they're being bullied and expect an adult to protect them. You can't have situations where bullying is treated as somehow normal behavior, and frankly, normal male behavior, where a teacher says, that's boys will be boys. You need an attitude that it's not acceptable, it's not acceptable, period. The county council, the county executive, we don't get to write the rules for the school board, but we do have a bully pulpit. We do have the ability to get up here and stand and talk about this issue and demand, or hopefully suggest to the school board that they take more serious action to prevent bullying in schools. They have the ability to set standards. They have behavior codes in schools. They have means of providing counseling to kids, not enough counseling, I might add. The schools are woefully short of counselors. But they have the ability to do this. We have some responsibility to provide them resources. But it's a matter of an executive being willing to say, this is not the county that we want to be, and this is not the county that we expect you to be. And I can guarantee you, somebody who's been there and seen it firsthand as a teacher, this is a stoppable problem. Bullies only flourish when people turn their backs and say, I can't do anything about it, that's just the way it is. And people have to say, this isn't the way it is, we can do something about it. We've got to be willing to, sometimes make the bully uncomfortable. They shouldn't feel like this is an appropriate behavior, they shouldn't get reinforced. And I think that's the least you can ask out of the county executive and the council as a whole. These are really joint projects. I mean, at the end of the day, the county government isn't a repository of the executive, it's not a repository of the council. It's a repository of all of us working together. And I think one of the strengths of the county over the past few years has been that anything we did was supported by the executive, and anything the executive did was supported by us. And I can guarantee you I'll continue to work that way to make sure it's a partnership and no one is confused about the messages that come from Montgomery County leadership.
First of all, I want to acknowledge we've been joined by our Congressman Jamie Raskin. Hi, Jamie. Many of you may know that I was the first elected official in Montgomery County to call for closing public schools on both Eid festivals. I think that that's important so that those who want to have a day off for worship and for family time don't feel stigmatized and don't have to explain that they worship in a different tradition. And we formed a coalition around this called Equality for Eid. It was led by a number of people here in this room. Samira Hussein was very active in it. Donald Zafar Mirza is here, Mimi Hassani, Saqib Ali, many other community leaders. And ultimately, we persuaded the Board of Education to close schools when Eid coincides with the school day. And this will be important to remain vigilant on this because of Governor Hogan's requirement now that schools open after Labor Day each year. We may lose not only the Eid holiday, but also the Jewish High Holy Days as closed school days. So the community needs to stay involved in this because elected officials respond to the people we see and hear. And if we want to make sure that schools remain closed on the Eid holidays, the Board of Education needs to hear from the community. I know that there was a study, I think it was commissioned by MCMF, about bullying experienced by Muslim school children. And the numbers were shocking, that bullying takes place on school grounds on a regular basis, and that if a young lady is wearing hijab or male student has the name Muhammad, they become targeted for mockery and stigma. That's unacceptable in Montgomery County. I absolutely will work and have worked with the school leadership, the superintendent, and the school board to insist on better training, consciousness raising. We've got to be sensitive. And of course, our school system, the average is pulled up by the extraordinarily successful academic rankings of our Muslim students. We're very fortunate to have Muslim students in the school system, and so we need to ensure a climate of shared success, tolerance, acceptance, understanding, and understanding other backgrounds, other languages, other traditions, other faith heritage is part of education. That's why, in part, the Montgomery County schools are so great. If you graduate the Montgomery County schools, really in every school, you're going to know a lot about the world because you will have interacted with people from many different backgrounds in many different countries. So that's a big plus for our educational system, and we need to celebrate that and take advantage of it. As I said earlier, brag about it. It's a great advantage that we have in this globally competitive marketplace.
Thank you.
So let's be clear. There is no room in our school system for bullying of any kind. We need to know about it. We need to address it. We have a great school superintendent. Jack Smith really is fabulous. We have a strong school board. It is an awkward relationship between our county government and our school system. We write the check. We don't control how they spend the dollars or what they do. But as has been observed, we can have those important conversations where we say, if you want a big check, we need to see progress on ending bullying in our school system. I would say more broadly that what happens when communities are under attack, that their natural instinct is to withdraw and to go further into themselves. And I say to you with my open heart that it's actually the opposite that we need you to do when you're feeling under attack. We need you to go forth and share who you are, your traditions, with us. As I've shared with you, the Sufis have touched my life incredibly, part of your faith. And so we learn from you. It is only when people don't know each other, have not connected at a heart level, not through the mind. The mind really often gets in the way. It is through understanding each other. It is through the heart. It is by having shared meals with one another. That is how we will break down this terrible discrimination. That is how we will be truly one people. When we see each other and look into each other's eyes and say, there you are, there I am, we are one. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'd institute Robin's Too Busy to Bully program and talk to the teachers in the school. I know that I couldn't be in every classroom, but there's a teacher in every classroom. They have to be educated to recognize the signs of bullying. But we need to challenge our children so they're too busy to bully. I'm in favor of having every kid in every Montgomery County school run or walk a mile every day. I'm in favor of challenging these kids to improve themselves so they can rise up and be the cream of the crop. I know that when you challenge children, they respond proportionally. And if we have kids in Montgomery County believe they can be the best, they're going to be too busy to bully. That's why I want to bring Amazon's HQ2 here. I know the type of people that are running the #1 company in America. These are going to be people whose kids are too busy to bully. They're too busy learning math, striving, trying to get ahead. And that's the kind of example I want to be. I have 3 college degrees, as does my son. My son studied petroleum and natural gas engineering at the University of West Virginia. Guess what? Half the students in his class were from the Middle East. people striving to better themselves, people striving to develop wealth. We need to bring in high-paying jobs into Montgomery County so that every school kid here will strive to grow up to inherit one of those well-paying jobs. We're going to be too busy to bully in Montgomery County.
Thank you, and hopefully our community is not too busy to get involved in the local politics and in the school system and school board, right? We need to not be too busy to do that. But I will ask you a more specific question, right? Because again, our goal is to make sure that we know all the programs. I know of 2 people that are Muslim Americans that happen to live and work well, live in this county. Unfortunately, they work in different parts, but that have degrees in specific training on sensitizing people to differences and to ensure that there is conflict resolution, etc. I know one of them has been trying to get involved with our school board. What kind of programs exist, and we don't have to be elaborate about this, but are there any programs right now in our school system that you know of that are created specifically to sensitize all of the teachers, any training for the teachers to make sure that they know about the differences in all religions and how to respect them, and how to encourage children to be understanding and respectful of each other's differences when it comes to their faith? For example, our Muslims might have to wear hijab. Muslim girls might decide to wear hijab. Jewish people or Jewish students might want to wear a yarmulke. Now, we have to be sensitive to what's happening, but how do we ensure that we know the difference between what's a way to practice your faith and what could become a basis for bullying? Anybody? What kind of programs exist, if any? And another question, would there be a way to control maybe part of the budget to ensure that such a program exists?
So, the last part of your question is a really hard one for us because the council's attempted to control part of the school budget before in order to get certain outcomes, and we were not successful. We don't have the ability to order them to spend a certain way. But I know the school system has been trying to increase their training, cultural sensitivity training, because of the incidents that have occurred in the schools. Now, whether it's at the detail that you described, I can't honestly answer. I mean, I think it's a really good question, and I think that what needs to happen, and the people who want to work on this ought to be able to find out what's in the school curriculum and make meaningful comments and get some kind of response from the school system. I know too often people feel that if you're not part of that system and you're not part of the group that's making the decision, your input isn't necessarily welcome. And I hear from people, not infrequently, who say they don't feel they're getting heard. So I would be personally interested if we could look at what the school system's including in their curriculums, and is it inclusive enough? Because it's easy to see that people for whom these aren't primary issues in their lives, it's very easy to think they've covered their bases and not necessarily haven't covered their bases. So I think you've actually stimulated something that we need to look at and do something about, and I thank you for the question.
Absolutely, thank you for the answer.
Well, so,
About 30 seconds or so.
right, you have, fortunately, a lot of long-serving, very senior teachers who have been in the classroom for many years, and that's a good thing. And so the answer is no, as of today, there is not a mandatory cultural sensitivity training for all teachers regardless of when they enter the system. Those who enter the system new do get some training. I had a couple, Pakistani-American couple, recently in my office who had 2 questions about the school system, and as Mark has correctly explained, and as you noted, Isham, we don't control the school system. We can't tell the school system what to do. And they had 2 questions. Number 1, could you have mandatory cultural sensitivity training for all school personnel? And number 2, could we have some programs to teach Hindi and Urdu, which is a globally competitive language, the BRIC nations, very important. And so I asked the Chief Operating Officer of the school system, Andy Zuckerman, to take a meeting with those parents and that my staff would attend, because I want to hear the answers as to precisely what NCPS is doing to implement both of those very good ideas. But under state law, it's the independently elected school board that makes those decisions. There is an election next year. There are seats up on the school board next year. I assure you, candidates will be coming around and asking you for your vote. So if the community in a unified way requires mandatory cultural sensitivity training and asks for anti-bullying activity as a regular part of the curriculum, that is something I would encourage the community to ask when candidates for school board come around seeking your votes.
Thank
No one else has used 30 seconds. So
31.
I had a similar question because there was a particular high school that actually taught conflict resolution. Again, I served on the board of an international organization called Search for Common Ground. It teaches that conflict is normal. How you resolve conflict is what's so terribly important. And so I say to you that there's one high school that teaches this, and I've turned repeatedly to the school board members and the leadership of the school system and say, this really is important to teach people how to resolve conflicts in ways that are appropriate. And I would continue to fight for just that approach if I had the privilege of serving as county executive.
Thank you, sir. That was 28 seconds, Bob.
Well, I went through Montgomery County Public Schools, Montgomery Blair High School. My 3 children also attended Montgomery County schools. I would attend as county executive some of the school board meetings and be up to date, up to speed as to what's going on in our school system by being right there when the school board is meeting. And I would get to be friends. I would try my darndest to be friends with all the school board members so that I could have a one-on-one conversation with them at any time as to what the problems in the school system are. Discrimination needs to be eradicated. We need to have greater understanding of other faiths and religions. We also need to make sure that all our children have very strong English training from the very start of their school career. Because if they can communicate well in English with other faiths, with other people, then their problems are going to be less. If we have robust discussion of the issues, widespread input into decision making, we're going to have fewer problems. English is important. All our kids need to speak English well to be outstanding successes in life.
So, in order to really make the most of our time, there are a lot more questions that have been coming my way and your way, really. But I'll probably limit it to 2 questions with some succinct answers, if you don't mind, because these are the 2 questions that have come up time and time again. One of them is about CD, right? Cameron, so the program that's been so criticized, right? What are you aware of in terms of how it is implemented and what in your way should happen to it in County?
I have serious questions about the CD program, and I actually have a meeting set up with people because I wanted to talk to a couple of kids who went through the questioning of the CD program. What used to be a program looking for supposedly terrorists in general seems to have become a program with an unusual sole focus on the Muslim community. And last time I looked at terrorism in America, it's got a very different face, and it's not the Muslim community. And so I continue to be bothered by this kind of fixation on one community when we have other groups that have proven to be incredibly violent and incredibly dangerous, and we don't seem to be one iota concerned about them. We're not one iota concerned about people who have militias. I can't imagine if the Muslim community raised militias, they would get the lack of attention that any other group has. So I am concerned about what we do. I don't want kids questioned. I don't think because a kid is angry and upset. I mean, we were all kids. You ever get angry and upset and say something in school that somebody might take is like, oh, this kid's really, irritated right now? You cannot take those kind of things and turn them into this person's potential terrorist. And it's kind of frightening that we actually embarked on this program. It was with the University of Maryland. The program is supposed to be different now. And like I said, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to talk to people who've been through it. I don't think I don't think we should be doing it. I don't think they've found anything. And I think it's a real threat to our civil liberties if people can start listening to what a kid says and decide because they're angry or something that this is a potential terrorist, we've gone off the rails. So.
really don't want to know what my mother used to think when I was a kid.
So Montgomery County has accepted a few $100,000 in Department of Justice grants through the CVE program. It's administered by a nonprofit service provider called the Word Institute, which is run by Muslims based up in Montgomery Village. Under the Obama administration, it was launched as a way to protect young people who might need help, who were at risk. It was not intended to incarcerate those kids or put them in the criminal justice system, and it was intended to detect kids who might be at risk of joining neo-Nazi or white supremacist movements, or gang activity, MS-13 or others, or Islamic ISIS or other terrorist groups. Under the Trump administration, now all of the funding guidelines have changed, and the program is no longer supposed to concentrate on white supremacy or MS-13, and it's only supposed to concentrate on what they call violent Islamic terrorism. That's not acceptable, because certainly in Montgomery County that's not useful to us. We've had no incidents of violent Islamic terrorism in Montgomery County. We have had neo-Nazi and white supremacist activity, and we do have a problem with MS-13. We should not exaggerate it. A tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of Latino youth are involved in gang activity, but it is a real issue and a real problem. Thus far, the police department has accepted the DOJ grants, but the police department is not engaged in racial profiling. The police department is very clear that it is not engaged in surveillance of ordinary teenagers. But with the changed guidelines from the Trump administration, I think it's going to be much more difficult for the police department to accept that funding in future. So, you know, when the federal government wants to give you money, if you can implement the money in a way that's consistent with your values in Montgomery County, they have accepted the money in the past. I think under the new Trump administration guidelines, they should not accept it, because I don't see how they can run the program in a manner that's consistent with the dangers that we face in Montgomery County with at-risk youth. We have not faced the problem in Montgomery County. There's not been a single incident known of any Montgomery County youth joining ISIS. And so I don't think we're going to be eligible for the grants, and I don't think we should apply for them.
So the world changed in so many ways this past November, right? So what had good intentions once upon a time has been turned on its head. And now what we thought might be a net positive is turning into a net negative. If you do not feel that this program is being implemented in a way that serves you, if you feel stigmatized by this program, if you feel that your civil liberties are at risk here, then one of the very first things I will do as county executive is ensure that that does not continue. Thank you.
I know all the cops in the county because I'm in court every day. I've completed almost 40,000 cases in Maryland courts. And I'm in communication with these officers, and I'd make very sure as county executive that they were not discriminating against anyone and that they were enforcing the law fairly. I'm also opposed to corruption in Montgomery County. I want to make sure that Montgomery County is run ethically and without corruption. I note in the Post this morning, a lobbyist pled guilty to payoffs to a Prince George's County councilman. Matthew Gorman is pleading guilty in federal court to paying off for influence a Prince George's County councilman. In the article, it says Gorman, who's the gentleman that's been indicted in federal court, also offered to pay Campos, who is the Prince George's County councilman who was indicted, $5,000 to meet with Montgomery County Council members on behalf of a Montgomery County client of Gorman's. So I'd like to ask our opponents here if they have met with Mr. Gorman, if they have met with Mr. Campos, what they met with him about, was there any money involved, and have they accepted any contributions from Mr. Gorman or Mr. Campos? It's in the Washington Post this morning saying Gorman, Campos met with the council. What did they meet about? It doesn't say that in the article.
Thank you, Robin. You know what? I'm sure that there's going to be a forum for that or a platform for that question to come up and to be debated. So one more question, and then I'll let you know some more questions that have come up if you don't mind. And the following one is about taxes. And when we initially started canvassing the community, we did not think that taxes would be on the minds of most of our residents, but it is. And the main reason is there's been a recent hike in our property taxes. On top of the fact that Montgomery County is amongst, is one of the highest taxed counties in the state of Maryland, if not the highest tax in the state. And so what is your position on taxation, the current levels in the county and state? And also, how could we make Montgomery County more competitive, tax-wise, to our businesses, to attract more businesses? A lot of us are entrepreneurs. A lot of us are worried that they might have to set up their companies, or the companies that they lead or work for have to set up across the river sometimes just so that they can gain a little bit of an advantage.
Well, I think the tax question is a lot more complicated than just the property taxes. And we found out, for example, we were being compared to Virginia. Well, Virginia has a tax, it's a gross receipts tax, 3% on all business transactions in all businesses. Montgomery County doesn't have that. It raises more money than our energy tax, which is put on both residents and businesses. So I think sometimes people focus a little too much on property tax. But I will say, in a sense, you get what you pay for. You're in a county that has, some of the best schools in the country. You're in a county that has a park system. You're in a county that I think, provides quality of life. And I try to remind the business community, which is sometimes hard for them to hear, but the money we take and put back in the community is building the business community. It provides the place that people want to come to. People move to Montgomery County, number one, because of the schools. So the steps we took last year largely were to put funding into schools, both building capacity because our classrooms are overcrowded, and also dealing with programming because we were asking them to bring forward programs that dealt with the achievement gap. Our school system is way more diverse than it used to be. So what you need to teach kids and the spread of skills during a classroom, and I can tell you that, when I was going to school and you were in 5th grade, you were with kids who were basically at the 5th grade level. When I was teaching 5th grade, I had kids reading anywhere from 1st grade level to 5th grade level. It costs money to close those gaps. There's no other way to do it. So I don't think anybody wants to raise taxes. I don't look at this as like a proud accomplishment of raising taxes. But I'd say to you, there's no civilization in the world that's known for its tax rate. Civilization is known for what they do. And we shouldn't handicap ourselves and say we're not going to raise taxes if we have to. Now, I do think there are things that we can do differently. I've been a big proponent of making development get a larger share of infrastructure costs because what's not paid for by them ends up being paid for by Montgomery County taxpayers, or in the worst case, not paid for and not done at all. You get no infrastructure, and of course then you don't have the tax bite for that. And I absolutely believe that the county ought to look at restructuring internally. That anybody who believes that you're sitting on the best run $2+ billion county government in the universe and there's no way to save any money, I think that's wrong. I think we need to look at what's going to be sustainable. When we look at our projections and our budget going forward, we see relatively static revenues and rising demands, more demands for social services. Some of the things that your community is very active in continue to require the raising of more money. So we have a rising need for things, and we've got a relatively flat revenue base, and we've got to figure out how to balance it. I think that we really ought to look internally before we look at taxes, but I think what the council did was right, because if we don't take care of our schools, it's hard to figure out what our brand is going to be at the end of the day.
In 2016, the school board came to us with an enormous request to meet growing classroom size and the need for additional school construction, and the county council raised property taxes, and we raised recordation taxes to pay for our capital budget. It was an unpopular decision. I think it was the right decision, and we invested in our schools, and we've hired more teachers, and we've reduced classroom size, and we made sure that the resources went to those purposes. Now, I don't anticipate another tax increase soon, What I will tell you is that we've got to continue to maintain our superb school system, and when you talk about what attracts employers here, it's the excellent school system, the high quality of life, the honest government, the safe neighborhoods, the excellent police department. So we've got to achieve a balance where we do not continually increase taxes. Fortunately, 2017, our budget was pretty healthy. We had made the decision the prior year, and we had a conflict-free budget. We were able to honor negotiated raises, which had not occurred for many years during the recession. Employees had gotten no raises, and without dispute and without any further tax increase. So we don't want to raise taxes again. I certainly don't want to, but I stand by the tough decision that we made in 2016 because we've got to maintain the quality of our school system. Ultimately, that is the #1 thing that draws people to Montgomery County. We had a forum, actually, Council President Berlin organized a forum of major employers in the county, and we asked them, what is the #1 thing that county government needs to do for you? And they talked about attracting the next generation of talent. They talked about placemaking. They talked about having exciting urban spaces where young people want to be, where they want to go out, where they want to have a good time, adjacent to public transportation, restaurants, entertainment. They didn't mention taxes, and we gave them every opportunity. 5 major employers. Now, taxes, nobody likes to pay them. Everybody wants excellent services. Having now raised taxes in 2016, what we need to do is maintain excellent services without additional taxes. In addition, obviously, we've got to increase our commercial tax base. We've got to attract new employment. The way that we're going to fund growth in demand for services is by attracting more employment and having a healthier tax base without further increases in tax rates. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you understand that leadership is not always doing what's popular. If any of you doubt that we did not appreciate that what we did was going to be unpopular, really, we've been doing this work a long time. We knew it was going to be unpopular. And we said to ourselves, it is absolutely necessary. It was an education-first budget back then. And we all, and with Mr. Ficker's amendment, 9-0, including those of us who have been more fiscally conservative than some of the others, said, we need to do this. As Mr. Leventhal said, the school system came to us, asked for $90 million over maintenance of effort. $90 billion. It was the first time that we actually turned to them and said, if you want $90 million over maintenance of effort, instead of giving all the dollars to the teachers, we want to see a reduction in class size, and we want to see more dollars spent on reducing the achievement gap. So we use this opportunity in an unprecedented way to say, school system, you need to do your business differently. And they did. And I would say to you that I have been really one of those that tried very hard not to raise taxes. In my presidency this past term, we did not raise taxes. I led the effort for many years to reduce our energy taxes. I formed a commission on government efficiency to see how can we be more efficient. So we should be more efficient. I support zero-based budgeting so that we don't look at every program as it has grown